kinda snuffy, cold chill up your spine. Go get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight.
Howdy there, I'm Matt McKinley and we're burning daylight.
In the saddle till the job's done right.
Welcome to Burnin Daylight, the only podcast for the working cowboy. Well, howdy there, daylight burners. Coming in hot on an early Tuesday morning. It's really early / late Sunday night. Reason being, I didn't know what I was going to record about. And I sat down to start working on a farm and ranch report, which I'll be honest, I don't actually really all enjoy doing those all that much. I'd rather, it might be better if I had somebody else to do it with, but I don't know. I'm not that big a fan of it. I like the research part of it, but I feel like I'm not a good news anchor type. I'm an opinion guy. So with that said, I'm going to try to present this deal to the best of my abilities. I got to change my camera here real quick. Something's getting all fucky. So we'll go back. I think that's better. Anyhow, while I was while I started my research on this week's episode, that probably won't happen, of the friggin' Farm and Ranch Report. The first article that I read was about this place down in Arkansas called Cook's Venture. And like I said, I'm going to try to present this from, even though I'm incredibly biased on this particular subject. However, I'm kind of biased on several different ways. So, but I am going to try to present this as objectively as possible. And I guess to put it, best way I can put it right now is without revealing too much information up front. This Cook's Venture deal is essentially a spin-off of Blue Apron. It was created by this fella named I don't even remember his name. I've been reading about him. Matthew Wadiak, who was a chef, and then helped co-found the company Blue Apron, who is kind of one of those meal delivery services. So like Moink Box or Butcher Box or Good Chop is another one, and then there's HelloFresh, and which my family uses. It's pretty good. It so this was a spinoff of Blue Apron. So one of the co-founders started this heritage breed poultry. I think they that's where we're going to focus on this, because it doesn't end well, needless to say. Well, maybe it's not needless to say. I don't know if you guys have heard anything about this. Most of my audience being cattle people, we don't deal too much with the production side of poultry outside of like your own little flock of chickens that you keep for eggs. And occasionally the the fryer. So like the only person I know that's kind of remotely involved in that is so Jake Smith, who's been on the show several times, buddy of the show. I haven't talked to him in a while, and I ought to give him a call. But I think he's got some chicken houses. He's from Arkansas. They run some cows too, and maybe I'll have him on talk a little bit more about this situation. I know a little bit about the kind of the backstory of the poultry industry and how it got to this concentrated system that we have today. Well, essentially, what this Cook's venture was to take the model of big poultry, so Tyson and Pilgrim's Pride, and I don't know, I think is owned by Cargill now. Maybe I'm not sure. But JBS was in there as well for a little while. I think maybe they still are. But it's the same, like big packers. They do pork, poultry, beef, all of them. They're all kind of one and the same. But Cook's venture was to take that model, and they developed, it's like something like 10 years of research. Well, we'll get into it here in a minute because I'll pull up their website. It's still up, even though the company has ceased operations. And like I said, it does not end well. And we'll get into that further down the line. But I'm biased on two fronts, so I'm going to come out with it now before we get further into the story. So I'm biased against these big packing companies because I think they're kind of necessary with the way that we've grown accustomed to cheap food here in America. I think that's like industrial agriculture is probably necessary to sustain a massive population like we have, 350 or so million people, as well as help feed the rest of the world as well. That being said, it's a cutthroat business. It's a dirty business, and they are some real cocksuckers that have some real power where it counts the most, and that being with the government and all the bureaucracies that come along with it. So I'm biased against big agriculture, big packing in that way, and also a lot of the stuff what they're doing, the crops that they're growing, the methods that they've pushed over the years are they are not great on a lot of issues. Like when you try to grow corn in the middle of the high plains where there's not enough water to grow corn, and then you develop irrigation so you can grow more corn, and then deplete your water resources and potentially maybe turn that area into an actual desert instead of kind of a semi-desert, which is what it's been as far as we've been aware of that part of the world. There's that. There's the chemicals that are used. There's a lot of issues, and I'm not anti any of it. I'm just saying that there's pros and cons to all of it, and we're kind of ignoring a lot of the cons, it seems like. Anyway, so that's kind of my bias against big agriculture. On the regenerative side of things, I think they make some good points. However, I think a lot of the people that are the biggest voices behind this regenerative agricultural movement are not serious agriculturists, especially on the scale side of things. They don't understand how shit works. They're more pie in the sky hippie types that while it might work for a small operation, I would encourage anybody who's like really interested in homesteading and being a farmer, like talk to some people that have done it for a while or are currently trying it. So like Justin Willis over in Virginia, he's doing some stuff, and talk to him about how fucking hard it is. Talk to Kate Bowen, who's been doing it for a long time now. And while it is a noble profession, it's a hard profession. And for the most part, talk to anybody in agriculture, is a fairly humble profession. Even when you look at some of the like the big time farmers, always driving new pickups, always got the latest in machinery. Like when you pencil it all out, they don't own a whole lot of that. Like they're beholden to the bank for quite a little bit of it. And it's in that case, it's a very humble profession. And this guy Matthew Wadnick comes from a cooking background, which I enjoy cooking. I'm a fairly decent cook, if I do say myself. But I also work in production agriculture, and I've seen a lot of different facets of it. I've been involved in farming in a little in a directly involved in it in a pretty minor way, or for short periods of time. But I grew up around it. I know a lot of farmers. I kind of know I kind of know the business a little bit. I've been in not in a slaughterhouse itself, but on the side of a slaughterhouse, making a food. I guess additive. I mean, it's all beef when it came down to it, but it's like it's a refined beef product that gets used to lower the fat quantity in hamburger and further on down the food chain. I've worked in a feedlot for a long time now, since 2009. I've worked on the cow calf side of things. I've been around the stocker side of things on the cattle side. I don't know much on the poultry and the pork, but I have a solid respect and understanding for what it takes to put food on the table. Like I've seen enough of of the whole supply chain that I get the overall gist of it, and I know enough to know that what I don't know what I'm talking about. So that being said, I find that a lot of the major voices for the regenerative farming movement are not people that are going to be seriously involved with the day-to-day operations of putting regeneratively / humanely / sustainably, whatever the buzzwords are about this going back to the old way of doing shit. Most of the people making all the biggest amount of noise and ruckus around this whole way of doing shit are not ever going to be seriously involved with the actual raising of the livestock, the farming of the crops, and much less the end point. This guy tried to compete with the big boys and do it with old timey type methods mixed with the vertical integration of the poultry industry. So I'm assuming most of you guys know what vertical integration is, but for the few that aren't aware or are not as familiar with it, vertically integrated means you own. So on this side, the chicken, you own the chicken from egg to slaughter, and you a lot of times the way the most of the chicken industry is run, the packer owns the bird from egg to the end product. All of the chicken tenders, the breasts, the thighs, the wings that get sold at the grocery store, as well as all the like the chicken nuggets, the all the processed stuff. That's it all comes from a bird that company has owned from the get go. However, they typically don't own the facilities that are used to grow the bird. Those are owned privately, and then the packers, say Tyson, or in this case, Cook Ventures, they contract with the farmer themselves to grow the bird, and then the farmer never owns the bird. They just take care of him, feed him to this company's specifications. On the big boy side, Tyson, Pilgrim's Pride, all those, they pay those farmers on what's known as a tournament system. And so it's all forward contracts, and then they compete against each other, and the best performing farms get bonuses or a higher pay rate, or I'm not sure exactly how that goes. A lot of people don't because it's a very secretive process. Anyways, so let's let's hear from the owner or the founder, who's not actually, I don't know if he's I don't know exactly how he's tied up with the company now. He left prior to all of this going down, but this is an article from 2019, if I remember right. Uh, yes, November of 2019, from Forbes, and it says Blue Apron co-founder Matthew Wadiak launches new venture to help reverse climate change. By any accounts, Matthew Wadiak has had a successful career. After working in kitchens as a young man, Wadiak and his two partners founded Blue Apron, a meal kit company that grew 795 million in sales in just 5 years before launching an IPO. So, this all started with a an article about the about the closure of the company, which, like I said, is not great. Um, and I think I read that article about 10 o'clock, um, and it's now 2 a.m. So I went down this whole rabbit hole, and this is the only story that or you know topic that I covered in the beginning of my research. So this is after about 30 different articles, maybe. It led me back to this article from 2019 because he was kind of a darling, as you can see. But 2 years ago, Wadiak started a new venture, once again taking aim at the way in which people purchase and consume food. Only this time, the venture stemmed not from a desire to help people cook more, but to build a model for a new type of environmentally and economically sustainable food system. From its 800-acre farms, Cook Ventures is building a viable model of regenerative agriculture. Blah. Uh, Cook's venture is building a viable model of regenerative agriculture that climate scientists agree could reverse climate change one chicken at a time. And so Kenny Gould is the name of the guy who wrote this article. And so this is a interview with the founder, Matthew Wadiak. So he says, "Where are you from?" Matthew says, "I was born in Houston. In middle school, I moved to Illinois. Grew up outside Chicago and moved to northern Illinois to a little town called Roscoe. I'd always been I'd always been interested in cooking. When I was sick at home, I'd watch Galloping Gourmet or Julia Child or whatever was on PBS. Then I'd go to the bookstore and buy a cookbook. As a kid, I'd cook family meals. So when the time came to get a high school job, I decided to work as a dishwasher in a restaurant. I worked at Mary's Market for a Cajun chef named Chris Avonda. I learned the basics from him. He taught me how to cut a tenderloin, how to cut fish. It was a very comprehensive training. He hired a sous chef who had the intention of opening a brewery with her husband. Her name was Stephanie Valentine, and she became my boss. She had just come from Charlie Trotter's in Chicago. She took me under her wing and taught me how to clean, how not to mess with the food too much, how to create a higher level of cooking. Chris got me the basics. Blah, blah, blah. So what'd you learn from the early cooking jobs? They helped me understand excellence. I was a messy teenager. Bum, bum, bum. Let's see. Okay, so you recently started a new project called Cook's Venture, which you define as a group of farmers, cooks, and food professionals building a new, more transparent food system. Did your time at Blue Apron play into that? And he says, over the years, I had many failed business ventures and some minor successes. At some point, I met up with my two co founders of Blue Apron. The fundamental idea behind the project was to get people to cook more. It happened that the kind of food I thought was acceptable to cook in a kitchen wasn't available. I thought the quality of those ingredients should be similar to what I use to cook. So we built a network of 250 farms that helped me realize that agriculture is a completely untapped area of opportunity in the biggest industry on the planet. Growing food, cooking food, preparing food, the art of eating. Um, so I don't know what he means by an untapped area of opportunity. Um, like, yeah, people have been growing, preparing, and eating food for a long time. It's the people in the city that became more and more, I guess, disassociated with it. But yeah, there's plenty of us out here that's been doing that for a long time. Particularly the growing part of it. But anyways, he comes off as a very arrogant type of guy. But once again, I'm biased on both sides of this issue, and I've kind of made up my mind I don't really like this guy, but I could be convinced that maybe he was he had noble intentions or whatever. But anyway, we'll continue here. The interviewer says, so you saw an opportunity. And he says, when people in the industrial food system think about feeding a lot of people, they think, let's go buy something that's available. They don't think about growing something new, which is not true. But it's important to think about those things differently. We live in an era where we have the ability to think about how we're growing food regeneratively. We should take into consideration what we want to eat and not just what we can eat. Interviewer says, can you give me an example of how our current food system is flawed? And he says, all the fruits, nuts, and vegetables grown for domestic and international export comprise about 3% of America's agricultural land use. The other 97% is allocated to primarily row crops like corn and soy. Now, most of the corn we grow goes to produce ethanol, but 1.7 liters of ethanol produces 1 liter of ethanol combustion energy. So that's 700% inefficient. It's ridiculous. The argument is always the same. We're creating jobs. But over 50% of the farmers lost money last year. So you have farmers you're subsidizing to grow cheap corn that are losing money. It makes no sense. After ethanol production, the largest use for corn is cattle feed. Except when you give cattle corn and soy as feed, it upsets their rumen. They have issues with digestion. In a human, this would be massive acid reflux. That's why most cattle are given growth hormones and antibiotics. They should be eating grass. Cattle are actually carbon negative when they're allowed to roam on pasture. So he makes a pretty decent point about the subsidized corn industry, particularly with ethanol. And yeah, when you give cattle, I don't know how much soy is given to cattle, to be honest with you. There might be some feedlots that use quite a bit of it, but the ones that I've been around, we didn't use any soy unless it was in some of the micro ingredients, like the feed additives that you give them to settle the rumen. So rumensin, Tylen, your mineral package and stuff. I don't know if maybe they use some soybean meal to use as like the conduit to mix all those. I would have to look at the ingredient tag, but for the most part, it's corn that we give cattle. It's a high energy feed, and they do well on it. They grow well. You do have to be careful with introducing too much corn because of the bugs in the rumen. But as you as you adjust them to that, um, then they do just fine. And as far as the ruminants in Thailand, the way I understand it, it doesn't have any effect on the human system. But that's what I used to think about a lot of stuff. You know, they've studied it. I have not read any of those studies. Um, but anyway, I do know that there are a lot of different major um, programs that these beef packers have that restrict the use of rumensin in Thailand. So you do have more bloats and digestive issues with the cattle that are I think that's what they consider their natural programs. And but that being said, you have a higher incidence of bloat, deads, and digestive issues. But all things aside, you still send a lot of cattle to slaughter. So the vast majority of them. I mean, you're talking maybe a percent or two uptick in digestive death loss, but I don't know the exact numbers. But it's still you still ship a lot of cattle to slaughter, and if so it can be done, and it can be done pretty efficiently. So I'm not fully on board with his statement, but his talk about the ethanol thing and subsidized agriculture, I think he hits on a lot of good points there. So credit where credit's due. Interviewer says it seems crazy that we continue to subsidize this system. He says we're missing the boat on the whole thing. If we really want to change the way we're thinking about agriculture, we need to think about the impact of corn and soy. And one of the animals that needs to eat corn is chicken, but modern breeds that grow into a 9 or 10 pound chicken don't have the digestive power to eat complex, diversified feeds. We're back to the same problem. They have to eat this high octane mix, which allows them to convert feed into muscle mass in a short time. But that's completely unnatural. We've gotten things wrong in the last 15 or 20 years that entrepreneurs look at one part of the supply chain. We're going to fix the soil, we're going to fix the chicken. From that lens, you can fix anything. They're reliant on integrated systems. To fix anything, you have to be a vertical company with a circular economy. That's what Cook's Venture is. We're a group of cooks, farmers, and professionals who couldn't find what we wanted in the food system. So we're building ourselves from the ground up, plant by plant, animal by animal, and meal by meal. So that's the end of that interview. Now let's take a look at their own website. So this is the main page for Cook's Venture. Your source for the best heritage meats. Pasture raised heirloom chicken, 100% grass fed beef, kurubata pork, and more delivered to your door. So, what's in the box? We proudly ship select cuts of pasture raised heirloom chicken and pasture raised meats, individually sealed, ready to cook. Raised on regenerative farmland, regionally sourced, non GMO feed. No antibiotics or hormones ever. Free shipping. The Cook's Venture difference. Good for the animals. Our heritage chicken and meats are bred to be healthy and strong, spending every day outside on pasture. Take care of the land. So it's good for the planet. We take care of the land we farm with regenerative farming methods and agroforestry systems that lead to nutrient rich soil. It's good for the people. Healthier animals equals healthier meat you can eat with confidence. Okay, so now our story. Why we started Cook's Venture, creating access to excellent food. Started on 800 acres of farmland in beautiful northwest Arkansas when we joined forces with third generation poultry farmer Blake Evans and began growing our unique heritage chickens. We engaged with regional crop farmers to grow feed using regenerative farming practices. We renovated our chicken farm, hatchery, and processing plant to pave the way to a reimagined meat industry. We built relationships with cattle ranchers, pork farmers, and fishermen across the country. We partner with values-driven businesses looking to build soil fertility, sequester carbon, and create biodiversity. It's good for the land, and it results in deeply flavored meats. Introducing the Pioneer breed. Cook's Venture breed, the Pioneer, is selectively bred from heritage line chickens, growing slower than conventional birds, resulting in a robust chicken with better gut health. The bird's strong frames allows them to thrive on pasture. This is the culmination of over 12 years of research with heritage lines to breed a better, healthier chicken while prioritizing health and flavor. It says you have the right to know what's in your meat. Despite the pastoral images and marketing claims, almost all meat today comes from mainstream operations that are labeled with greenwashed buzzwords. Finding food that is good for both us and the planet doesn't have to be this hard. Cook's Ventures, we're building an alternative to America's meat industry to deliver great food from independent regional farms. Our core values include a commitment to true transparency and prioritizing the health of the land and the well-being of our workers. There was our farms. So it's about how we farm. Animal welfare and environmental impact is at the center of it all. Every step of the farming, from breeding and raising animals humanely to implementing regenerative agricultural system, contributes to the amazing flavor of our meats. We work with nature, not fight against it, and you can taste the difference. Conscientious meat is possible. Practicing our value isn't about patting ourselves on the back. It's actually what makes our chicken and beef delicious, because every step of the process affects the health and taste of the meat. These are the standards we hold ourselves to, and we ask them to be upheld by our farmers and ranchers. Healthy chickens and beef raised without antibiotics, ample space to roam and forage on natural pasture, creating biodiverse, fertile soil through regenerative rotational grazing. Cook's Venture and Better Chicken Commitment. Cook's Venture is supportive of and committed to adopting the Better Chicken Commitment, which I'm not sure exactly what that is. So, what is the BCC? Studies show that consumers are so that seems to be that it's some program to kind of move away from some of the worst parts of industrial agriculture. So like when they're talking about the breeding of the birds, they have developed them over the years where it's kind of like show cattle. How like when you go to like say the Houston Stock Show or the National Western Stock Show in Denver, and all these big stock shows, and the animals that get shown there are not what you see on pasture for the most part. They're a lot of them are kind of structurally unsound, but they make a better picture. Like your range bull, is going to move a lot different than your typical show animals. And on the chicken side of things, like they've bred for growth in like the ones that the meat animals they've they've bred them to grow bigger and faster, and but the like their frame doesn't necessarily hold up, and because they get to slaughter weight much quicker than the old style breeds, then it's not a big deal. They don't have to carry around that frame very long. So anyway, so it's like a commitment to maybe slowing down the process a little bit. I don't know. It's yeah. I'd have to see. I couldn't find a whole list of what the requirements are, but anyway. So this Cook's venture is signing on. So we are exclusively using our own approved breed, the Pioneer, that are certified by the Global Animal Partnership Step Level 4, where the birds have access to diversified pasture. This exceeds the baseline chicken housing requirements on lighting, litter, enrichment, and space allowed, as well as demonstrating compliance using third-party auditing. This means that our customers are guaranteed chicken that already meets the approved breed and housing criteria of the Better Chicken Commitment. To meet the final component, we are developing a research-based plan that will then move us towards using multi-stage controlled atmosphere stunning in our processing facility by 2027. I don't know what that is, but one of my professors in college, Dr. Craig Peel, he's from, I believe he was from like Post, Texas originally. Went to Texas A&M. I think he got his grad degree from there as well. But anyway, I think he's still at CSU, but good guy. I really enjoyed. He taught my animal reproduction class. Good professor. Anyway, he was talking about. He told a story about when he was touring a poultry kill plant, and he said essentially you had this vat. I don't know how hot the water was, but you had this giant vat of water, and it was electrified, so it had electric current running through it. And I don't know if they like strung these chickens up by the leg or how they had them on the chain or whatever. But essentially, it took them, instead of stunning them like you would, like a steer, they have that captive bolt gun that hits them in the forehead, and it stuns them, and then they cut their throat. Well, these birds, they would just dip them in this vat of electrified water, and he said there was it would like splashing outside, and it would like crackle when it would hit. And he had his cell phone in his pocket and it was on vibrate, and somebody called him when he was walking through that kill room, and he liked to shit his pants. And we all laughed, had a good little chuckle at that. But that's literally all I know about those big processing, those kill plants for poultry. So I don't know what the controlled atmosphere stunning is. Couldn't tell you. I don't know if that's even relevant, but it was a funny story, so I thought I'd tell that. Processing facilities. To truly commit to changing the food system, we must commit to fair labor practices and livable wages. Cook's Venture is proud to be part of the Oklahoma Quality Jobs Program. Don't know what that is either. At our poultry processing plant, participation in the program demonstrates our commitment to livable wages in our county for our employees. As a vertically integrated business, our chickens are processed at our facility by hand and air chilled on site. We work with partners. We only work with partners whose values align with our own. We must be stewards not only of the land, but everyone on it. Animal breeds. A better breed equals better meat. That part's true, but it depends on your definition of better. The Angus is a very popular breed, kind of the dominant breed in the United States, for a pretty good reason, and that is strictly because of meat quality. There's other desirable aspects of the breed, but when it comes down to it, the black cattle sell higher because they grade better, and that's the desired breed of the packing companies, who, and in the long run, sell the end product. Um, so, um, yeah, and most of my comparisons come from the cattle business because that's the business I know. So what they say, every step of farming, from breeding and raising animals humanely to implementing a regenerative agriculture system, contributes to the amazing flavor of our meats. We work with nature. But okay, so um, that's kind of what I have on this company before we get into what happened with it. And it's I said it's kind of a pie in the sky idea. It's intriguing, but it seemed like maybe it had some potential. They had some money behind it. Seems like they had a what appears to be, it's got a very professional looking website. Um I guess we could see what they were selling at the time. Like what's their product look like? Um so let's go. It's expensive. 6 items is $169.99. We'll see what's in our 6 items. Nothing, because they're out of business. The 4 whole chicken box is $99.99. Currently sold out. Well, they're no longer in production. So, let me find a good article to start with. Got way too many tabs open here. But there was some good local reporting. It was mostly seemed like local reporting that at least what I at least what I read anyhow. It was, let me go back to my email. There was so it started, these articles from Agriculture Dive is where I first started reading. There they are. They did a multi-part. So this at least a 2-part series. I think it may be just 2-part series. Okay. So this was published on April 2nd. Part 1. Cook's venture tried to raise chickens better. Then 1 million birds were killed. Cook's venture was supposed to be a difference maker in the chicken industry. Instead, of the typical bird raised, slaughtered, and sold for the masses at grocery stores, the company contracted farmers, also known as growers, to care for a special heritage breed that had access to outdoors and grew at a slower rate. Some consumers believe these changes to improve the animal welfare and its taste, according to a study. Um, The Arkansas based company, initially founded in 2019 by Matthew Wadiak, the former chief operating officer at Blue Apron, launched with a focus on regenerative agriculture and touted practices to combat climate change. The company paid growers more for raising a premium product. Cook Ventures sold for about their chicken sold for about $5 a pound, more than double the typical grocery store prices. The high price tag, customer reviews were glowing, with one Reddit user saying there was never a, quote, woody or poor quality breast in their years of purchasing the chicken. Another reviewer touted Cook's as by far the best on the market, according to the company's website. It seemed like maybe they were putting out a pretty decent product. Where it went wrong, don't really know at the moment. By 2022, Cook secured $50 million in funding to expand its poultry genetics program and operations infrastructure. As early as last summer, the company was taking on new chicken growers. One of these new recruits was Dustin Mabey, a former construction worker from Green Forest, Arkansas. He told Agriculture Dive he didn't know much about Cooks before joining, but liked the idea of raising free-range chickens. Becoming a farmer was important to him as it meant more time with the family and less travel for work. Everything was going good, Mabey said. Then he received the letter. In November, Cooks notified Mabey and other growers that it was experiencing a financial difficulty and would close by the end of the month if it couldn't find an investor or adequate funding. If this happens, we are committed to winding down the company responsibly. All outstanding fees for services already rendered will be paid as part of this process. Blake Evans, executive vice president of the company, wrote in a letter dated November 17. Let's see if so. Here's the letter. November 17, 2023. To our valued grower partners, we are writing to inform you of a significant development at Cook's Venture. The company is experiencing financial difficulty. The board of the company is continuing to work to find a solution to save the company, including speaking with a potential purchaser who may be able to take over the company and prevent a company shutdown. Unfortunately, if the potential sale of the company does not occur, we will need to shut down the company and close its facilities between November 20 and 30, 2023. If this happens, we are committed to winding down the company responsibly. All outstanding fees for services already rendered will be paid as a part of this process. We want to express our deepest gratitude for the work you have done for Cook's Venture over the years. Your partnership has been a critical part of our business, and it is with a heavy heart we find ourselves in this position. If you have any immediate questions or concern, please do not hesitate to contact us. Thank you for all that you have done for us, and we wish you the very best. Soon, reports of production layoffs emerged, and growers began raising questions about the hordes of chicken on their land. Would this flock get picked up for processing? If not, what would happen? What about utility bills and mortgages? Would the birds starve once the feed and water ran dry? Is there another processor available to help? Arkansas State Senator Brian King, a longtime poultry grower, thought the state should step in and offer financial support to impacted farmers. He sought for an emergency declaration raising animal welfare, disease, and environmental concerns. But the governor's office declined King's request, stating the proper role of government does not include state assumption of private debts, according to a letter dated December 8th from Arkansas Secretary of Agriculture Wes Ward. Even though the state dismissed helping the growers financially, the Arkansas Department of Agriculture's Livestock and Poultry Commission assisted cooks in the aftermath of the closure. The agency sent field workers affected to farms to smother the birds with foam to address animal welfare and disease concerns. To smother the birds with foam was their solution. The deal was for the state to euthanize the birds and cooks to handle the disposal and cleanup. This agreement led to a series of missteps and miscommunication that resulted in more than 1 million dead chickens across northwest Arkansas and several upset, financially stressed poultry growers who felt they were on the hook for cleaning Cook's mess. The day before Thanksgiving, the Livestock Commission got a call from cooks about the closure and what that meant for the state's poultry growers. The commission bent over backwards through the break, working nights and weekends, trying to help and answer questions from legislatures and the public to the best of its ability. Ward said in a testimony at a joint agriculture committee hearing on February 9th, but 3 growers in attendance countered this, saying communications from Cooks and the state was rather poor through the process. Cooks, which was not present at the meeting, ignored multiple requests for comment from Agriculture Dive. So in the part 2, I think, yeah, so this is part 2. And this was the first article that I read here. And then I worked backwards from there. So after the collapse of Cook's Ventures, chicken farmers looked for answers. Poultry growers face stress and financial hardship from the sudden closure of an Arkansas-based company. State interventions made things worse, they say. In December, several trucks carrying heavy foaming equipment idled outside of Lance Logan's Alpena, Arkansas farm, blocking the roads. The standoff between the grower and Arkansas Livestock and Poultry Commission went on for hours. Logan said he couldn't trust Cooks nor the state. He had just signed a 3-year contract and invested a lot of money to update one of his chicken houses shortly before the company sent its letter. Logan said in a testimony at a joint agriculture committee hearing on February 9th. I wonder if there's video of that. I don't know. I might have to look for that at some point. Anyway, he says, I'm told they're going to kill all my chickens and leave them on my place in the houses to rot, or I could bury them. Logan testified. I have no way of burying 102,000 chickens, and my chickens weigh probably close to 5 pounds, so I locked the gates and I wouldn't let them foam my chickens until they told me a way to haul the chickens off. Patrick Fisk, director of the Livestock Commission, confronted Logan's challenge. In a testimony, Logan said Fisk called him and cast blame for any dead birds on the property. This is not on me, Logan said. I would let them foam the chickens as long as they had trucks to haul them off. That's all I was stating for 2.5 weeks. At one point, Landon Logan, a poultry grower and Lance's brother, showed up carrying a handgun on his hip, the Madison County Record reported on January 31st. A supervisor alleged the gun was in full sight and created a safety risk for the workers, but Lance Logan insisted it was a concealed weapon. There had been some things put in newspapers and things that's not true, Lance Logan said in a testimony. Eventually, a dumpster truck arrived, and Lance Logan allowed the field workers to foam his birds. He received a partial payment from Cooks for his services. I had talked to other growers, and they still had all these chickens rotting in their houses. Some of them still have them in their houses, and these growers don't have a way to get rid of them. At the hearing, Arkansas lawmakers tried to get clarity on the situation, including the state's role in the dispute between Cooks and his contract poultry growers and where things went south. Arkansas Agriculture Secretary Wes Ward and Fisk expressed sympathy to the affected growers and explained how the department acted in the best interest of the state and the poultry industry. The company called me and said they are flat out broke. They have no money for feed. The birds will resort to cannibalism, Fisk told the lawmakers. In a letter to a grower, Cooks indicated it was responsible for the live birds and agreed to help in the removal process once the test results came back negative for highly pathogenic avian influenza known as bird flu. We just try to step in and eliminate any risk of bird flu or the spread of the disease in the state, Fisk said in reference to avian influenza. Let's see, they got a letter here as well. So, December 7th, 2023 to Dustin Maybe. RE bird removal. Dear Sir, Cook's Ventures will be removing all birds from your property at our cost following the state applied foaming process that is scheduled to take place Monday, December 11th, 2023. I realize this date has been pushed back from our previous discussions, but I was just informed the state has run out of foaming supplies and need to restock prior to continuing. My apologies for the inconvenience this may cause. Please rest assured that the removal of the birds, the transportation of the birds, and the disposal method of the birds will be done under a state of Arkansas approved permit, as the state has approved our plan of euthanasia, transportation, and disposal. Due to the farm being located within an AI or avian influenza impacted zone, we will be testing your flocks over the weekend in accordance with the state of Arkansas requirements for livestock movements. Following acceptable test results, we will be removing the birds as discussed. Thank you for your cooperation in the matter. Sincerely, Tim Singleton, Cook's Venture Chief Operating Officer. All right, so go back. The disease, which can be fatal to chickens and in rare cases be transmitted to humans, has ravaged the poultry industry in recent years, disrupting markets and production. Officials have depopulated about 82 million birds across 47 states in the past 2 years, according to the USDA. 9 farms that raised chickens for Cooks were in an HPAI zone, according to a letter from the Livestock Commission, meaning they were within a 25-mile radius of the farms that had recently tested positive for the virus and were under state restrictions that limited transportation. Part of the commission's role is to control, suppress, and eradicate animal diseases and pests, according to Arkansas Statute 2233-107. The department also has full authority over the supervision of livestock and poultry sanitation work. The Livestock Commission maintained a supervisory role over the cleanup. Fisk said the department had funds and resources to eradicate but not dispose of the million or so birds in the northwest region of the state, Fisk said. I put that onus on Cooks. The growers had 2 options for disposal. They could either bury the birds or compost them inside the chicken houses. There were some issues that the department addressed with certain growers, Fisk said, but the majority of birds were composted correctly. The state considered other options before foaming the chickens. Fisk said the state commission sought another company or processor to take the birds, but no one was interested. Chickens were considered compromised and losing weight without feed. We cannot find a processor willing to take those birds. That's when we elected to depopulate, Fisk said. Throughout the hearing, state lawmakers expressed a range of concerns. Some blamed Cooks, while others saw flaws in the department's actions. None of this would have happened if Cooks hadn't have misrepresented their contract, broke the contract, or had any financial issues on their part, State Senator Tyler Dees said. No Cooks representatives were present at the hearing to defend themselves. State Senator Matt Stone questioned why the commission elected not to complete the entire disposal process if the goal was to protect the industry from a disease outbreaks. Quote, Cooks has come and gone, Stone said. Why would the balance of the process fall back on the poultry grower who was already distressed because they got into an almost bankrupt situation? Fisk said the commission lacked the proper equipment and would be inclined to take on those duties if the funding and resources were available. If you didn't have the funding, why would the poultry growers themselves have the funding? Stone asked. Fair enough, Fisk said. So now we get into some of the really weird stuff. So this was from a local ABC station out of probably Little Rock or somewhere. But it is KATV. So Arkansas Poultry Company closure leaves farmers high and dry. 1.3 million birds euthanized. Yeah, so Little Rock. Fallout from the closure of the Northwest Arkansas Poultry Company Cook's Venture in November 2023 continues to affect farmers who had contracts with the company. Poultry growers say mismanagement and miscommunication from both the company and the Arkansas Department of Agriculture left them to deal with the company's mess. Let's see, the chickens were what ran the farm. That's what was our livelihood. That's how we paid the bills, said Leslie Harp, a Madison County poultry grower contracted with Cook's Venture. Poultry growers said that after Cook's Venture announced its closure, it told them it would take the chicken flocks off their hands and process them. Roughly a week later, growers said the company suddenly informed them the birds would have to be euthanized because it didn't have the means to pick up or process them. I got a call from the live production manager at that point in time. I think it was around 7 o'clock at night, stating that the state would be coming the next day to depopulate my birds. No reason why, Harp said. So, yeah, Leslie Harp. Cook's Venture asked the Arkansas Department of Agriculture to euthanize the chicken. The department said the company's request was due to avian influenza concerns in the region. So, according to this, the company used the avian influenza deal to essentially get themselves out of a real pickle because they had 1 million birds that they couldn't process because they didn't have money to keep their processing plants running. Poultry growers for Cook's Venture told KATV that after chickens were euthanized, the state said Cook's Venture would handle the disposal, but the company only arranged cleanup for 3 farmers, leaving the vast majority with chicken houses full of the company's dead birds. I was devastated because those were our livelihood to keep the farm running and a way of life. Now we have no job and a pile of chickens they said they would clean up, but still have not. Carroll County poultry grower Darren Swafford. What's more, the poultry grower said the flocks were euthanized even when they didn't test positive for avian influenza, and in spite of the fact that some growers had enough resources to keep them alive. Cook's Venture called November 28 and said, shut off the feed. So I asked if there was anything to stop this from happening and got a fast no, Swafford said. Harps also said she would have had enough feed to maintain her flock. Quote, I do think the states should have ran down some different avenues before they just came in here and depopulated the birds and just took Cooks at their word. Harp said, I think maybe they should have handled that on a farm-by-farm basis. Beyond that, farmers say that Cook's Venture has failed to pay them for their services. Harp says the company has only paid her $3,800 out of the $35,000 owed to her. Dustin Mabey, a Carroll County poultry grower, says the company still owes him $42,000. Quote, I've got a propane bill and a power bill sitting on my desk that I can't pay. If you can't get paid for what you've already done, what is a person supposed to do? It's absolutely devastating, Maybe said. Maybe had about 70,000 chickens on his farm. He says when state workers came out to euthanize the flocks, they took issue with him recording the proceedings with a GoPro and refused to continue. Quote, they tried to get me to sign a piece of paper telling me that my farm was on quarantine now and that they was going to leave, Maybe said. Maybe, who said his flocks did not test positive for bird flu, says state employees left and didn't come back to euthanize birds until 6 days later, by which time he had run out of feed, usually supplied by Cook's Venture, and his flocks began starving and eating each other. Swafford also described an unpleasant experience he had with state crews when they came to his farm to euthanize his birds. Quote, flew in through my gates about 6 or 7 vehicles, 15 or so men. I met them at the chicken house and started asking questions, and they said, get back and shut up. We are here to do our jobs. Next came a tanker truck with water, and they set up a makeshift pool to add chemicals they were going to spray the birds with. I asked if they had any safety data sheets on the chemicals they were spraying and got a no. So they pretty much pushed all my birds to the front of the chicken houses and sprayed them with foam, Swafford said. Among the most vocal and condemning the Department of Agriculture and Patrick Fisk, a director of its Livestock and Poultry Division, is State Senator Brian King, himself a poultry grower. Quote, we have laws for avian influenza where you can go in and depopulate. This situation was these chickens did not test positive for avian influenza. I mean, this is reminiscent of a communist country. I mean, it really is, where the landowner in that had no rights in that thing. And Mr. Fisk, as he's repeatedly said, acted on behalf of the company. And unfortunately, the taxpayers are paying for this, King said. King has gone as far as to call for Fisk and Arkansas Agriculture Secretary Wes Ward to resign over the Cook's Venture debacle. Probably wouldn't be a bad idea. That's just my 2 cents. In December, King requested that the state declare an emergency and compensate affected poultry growers. After the request was denied by Ward, King announced his intention to secure compensation for growers at April's fiscal session. In the meantime, Maybe, Harp, and other growers are pursuing litigation against Cook's Venture. The Department of Agriculture did not agree to interview with KATV, but did provide, 4 letters and documents concerning the aftermath of Cook's Venture closing. And so there's a couple documents here. So let me try to all right, so December 8th. This is in response to the Senator King RE December 8, 2023, request for government debt assumption and disaster declaration. Dear Senator King, thank you for your letter dated December 8, 2023, regarding the closing of Cook's Venture Incorporated and your request for a declaration of emergency. Because the proper role of government does not include state assumption of private debts, your request has been respectfully declined. Poultry farmers and poultry production are integral to our state's success. Northern Arkansas chicken growers have long provided an affordable source of nutrition not only to their fellow Arkansans, but also to the nation and the world. This is precisely why we staff why staff from Arkansas Department of Agriculture and I proactively worked over Thanksgiving to provide necessary assistance. Government workers always got to let you know when they had to work a holiday. God damn it, that's their day off, and this is how much they care for you that they came in and worked that day. Okay. However, your request that the government provide full compensation to any entity related to the closing of Cook's Venture Incorporated goes beyond the scope of appropriate state action. The state of Arkansas cannot, quote, assume responsibility, end quote, for a company simply because that company has encountered, quote, financial distress. Our farmers are the greatest in the world, and we can compete with anyone so long as markets remain free and fair. Unfortunately, because granting your request would be contrary to those values, your request must be denied or declined. Sincerely, Wes Ward, Arkansas Secretary of Agriculture. So then there was another paper which I have here. That they also sent in. So what did they? Document from the Arkansas Department of Agriculture explaining its response to Cook's Venture's closure and aftermath. Highly pathogenic avian influenza, or HPAI, a viral disease that can infect poultry and wild birds, is often fatal to chickens and can spread rapidly from flock to flock. There are no treatments or vaccines available to control avian influenza. The only available control is depopulation of all affected and exposed flocks. The 2022 to 2024 avian influenza outbreak has affected The 2022 to 2024 avian influenza outbreak has affected 1,093 flocks in 47 states, requiring depopulation of more than 84 million birds. Arkansas has had 5 positive affected flocks that require the depopulation of more than 255,000 birds. So the whole state during this entire outbreak, they've had to put down 255,000 birds. But because this green regenerative hippy dippy company couldn't pay their bills, they requested the euthanasia of 1.3 million birds, none of which that I'm aware of were ever tested positive for avian influenza. On October 30th, 2023, a highly pathogenic avian influenza case was confirmed on a poultry farm in Madison County, which prompted state and federal control measures that included establishment of a control zone within 25 miles of the infected area and required testing and permitting of any poultry prior to movement. Subsequent cases were confirmed on November 29th in Carroll County, December 4th in Johnson County, December 7th in Carroll County, and December 14th in Scott County. On November 17th, 2023, a free-range poultry company operating in northwest Arkansas called Cook's Venture sent a letter to their contractual growers informing them they were experiencing financial difficulties. On December 22nd, 2023, the department was notified that Cook's had closed its live poultry operations in Arkansas and their processing plant in Oklahoma. The Arkansas Department of Agriculture's Livestock and Poultry Director contacted the company that same day and informed them of Arkansas law regarding the movement of birds, testing, and disposal. Despite closing their live poultry operations in the states, The chickens were being grown under contract by poultry growers for Cook's Ventures, and the birds remain property of Cook's Ventures. As a result, Cook's Ventures was and remains responsible for the birds and to the growers in accordance with their respective contracts. The situation with Cook's Ventures raised not only animal welfare concerns but also animal disease concerns in light of the ongoing avian influenza outbreaks across the United States. In fact, 9 poultry farms associated with Cook's Ventures were within the federal avian influenza control zone and within 6 miles of the original avian influenza infected farm. Due to the avian influenza concern at the time, Cook's Venture requested that the department euthanize the chickens owned by the company and that were being raised by their contract growers. Prior to euthanizing the birds, the department attempted to assist Cook's Venture in finding other options, including for feeding and processing. Further, the department received oral confirmation from Cook's Venture that the company would be responsible for the disposal costs in accordance with the Arkansas Livestock and Poultry Commission rules. In a letter dated December 7th, 2023, Cook's Venture stated that the birds would be removed from the farms at the company's costs. As of December 13th, 2023, the department euthanized approximately 1.3 million birds through a water-based foam process in 71 houses on 19 farms. The Department of Agriculture oversaw the disposal of birds to ensure compliance with Arkansas law. All but 2 of the farms composted the birds inside the poultry houses, which will allow them to apply the composted material to their land as fertilizer. 2 farms refused to bury or compost the birds on site, which required the birds to be tested for avian influenza, issuance of movement permits, and the hiring of a contractor by Cook's Ventures to bury the birds off-site. Compensation for the loss of the birds and associated income is a legal matter between Cook's Venture and its contract growers. Please see the attached letter regarding the state of Arkansas's assumption of private debts. Additional questions should be directed to Cook's Venture. So the letter that I read earlier, that is what they're referring to here. So from there, I found a pretty good series of articles from Axios, Northwest Arkansas. So Axios is a pretty large media outlet. Part 3. There's 4 parts of this story, and they're fairly short. So we'll kind of wrap up after on this little series here, because it does a pretty good job of we've got kind of the most of the story, but this goes a little more into, it covers a little bit little different angle, I suppose. So investors. So this is March 4th, 2024. Like I said, it's a 4-part series. By Worth Sparkman. I'm gonna reach out to some of these people that are either producers, some of the journalists that working on this too. So this is a really interesting story. Investors sowed millions into slow-growing chicken venture, then it closed. This is the headline. 72,000 baby chicks were delivered to Leslie Harp's farm near Clifty at 5:30 p.m. on November 17th. By 8 p.m., she'd been notified by the company that owned the birds, Cook's Venture, that Cook's Venture was going out of business. So they dropped them off at 5:30 p.m. and 2.5 hours later, they let her know that, oh, by the way, we're going out of business. The Decatur company's sudden closure was startling. More than a million chickens were euthanized and not used for food, including those on Harp's farm. Many farmers, including Harp, still haven't received payment or help disposing of the carcasses, despite promises of both from Cook's management. And still, months later, questions remain about how a next-generation food company that raised upward of $150 million could fold without warning. What they're saying, quote, there was never any indicator they were ever going out of business or had any financial issues because the company kept bringing chickens to raise with only 7 to 10 days between deliveries, Harp said. 10 days is a short turnaround in the industry. There is potential to lose our farm if we don't find another company to grow for or find another path, she told Axios in January. The big picture. Cook's Venture launched at a time when many U.S. consumers were looking for options to buy slow-growing, free-range, raised without antibiotics chicken for taste and quality. Some consumers believe this type of farming is better for the planet, though there are trade-offs. A leader in the conversation, Whole Foods, said in 2016 it would require vendors to raise slow-growing chickens by 2024. A venture to capitalize on the demands of discerning consumers surely made sense to company executives, Cook's founder Matthew Wadiak and Executive Vice President Blake Evans, and investors. Follow the money. Axios estimates Cook's Ventures collected between $123 million and $152 million from private investors from its founding in 2019 through 2023 per SEC and PitchBook data. The most recent infusion was $3.5 million in late August, just 3 months before closing. The company laid off 511 workers, including 6 executives, from November 20th to November 30th. More than 80 contract farms in Arkansas were growing its chickens. It's unclear how the company used its capital, if it maintained a prudent reserve, or why it continued to place chicks on farms when executives were unaware of the possible closure. Evans and former employees of the company did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Between the lines, the realities of chicken farming makes Cook's abrupt closure even more striking. It takes about 3 weeks to incubate an egg and about 8 weeks before this breed of chicken is grown enough to slaughter. It's roughly 11 weeks. In other words, the supply line is planned well in advance. Cook's Ventures human resources director told employees in a November 17th letter that the company had been, quote, engaged in serious discussion with investors to obtain financing since, quote, at least as early as September 1st, 2023. That span is 11 weeks, or about how long it takes to grow the Cook's breed to harvest weight. The latest, Harp was more optimistic, speaking with Axios in March. We're not in danger of losing our farm at the moment because the payment's not due until October, she said. In the meantime, she's exploring options to convert the farm to horticulture, but noted she had to get a job to pay the bills. All right. That was into part 1. Moving on, part 2. And I'll try to be quick with these because it's getting late. And I'm not a great out loud reader, if you haven't noticed. Cook's Venture CEO says company needed more capital. The founder of failed poultry startup Cook's Venture tells Axios that a lack of money was its downfall. Quote, we would have been a successful company if we had access to capital, no doubt about it, Matthew Wadiak said, noting that investment in alternative meat towers over what Cook's garnered. Why it matters. The Decatur company left hundreds of employees, dozens of contract farmers, and investors in a lurch last November when it abruptly closed most of its operations. State of play. Wadiak, who was the company's first CEO, departed in August and stressed he had no insight into the last few months of its operations. He declined to say why he left and referred Axios to its board of directors. What he's saying, Axios' estimate published last week of the capital raised by Cooks between 123 and 152 million was, quote, rubbish, but, quote, I can't speak to the actual figure. Quote, I'll tell you, it was much less, Wadiak said. Money went to renovate a processing plant, run a second plant, revamp its genetics operation, as well as its hatchery, and build a network of contract growers. Real capital to build a new complex, you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, he said. Although there was a significant amount of money raised, it was very much shoestring compared to other poultry companies. The pandemic that began in 2020 created a sudden drop in demand for its products, drained some operating capital while it dealt with COVID-19 restrictions on workers, and pushed Cooks to the back of the line for outsourced labor to debone its chickens. Companies like Twin Rivers Foods and the former Ozark Mountain Poultry provide this service. Meanwhile, NWA's, our Northwest Arkansas's poultry companies, are not really supportive of new folks who are joining into the sector, especially with alternative genetics. He said, calling his time at Cooks an uphill battle. Wadiak was the co-founder of Blue Apron in 2012. To launch Cooks in 2018, he acquired a chicken breed, several buildings and poultry houses, 800 acres, and 2 Oklahoma processing plants from the defunct Crystal Lake Farms. He paid 8 figures to West Liberty Foods of Iowa for the assets. Chicken was to be Cook Ventures' main revenue stream, but Wadiak also planned to grow row crops to feed the birds to create what he called regenerative agriculture. The company also dabbled in selling beef and pork. Cook's target market was a tad murky and changed over time. Its proprietary breed of chickens were to be sold to retailers and high-end restaurants, but also direct to consumer, a la Blue Apron. And then said, a box of 4 whole birds cost $100. That's what we saw on their website. The bottom line, Wadiak still believes in the mission of the company. I hope nothing more for Cook's Ventures to someday resurrect, he said. Cook's Ventures was the one opportunity that the world had for a better breed of chicken and a better farming system. All right, part 3. Cook's Venture gets $70 million line of credit, but future unclear. Executive Vice President Blake Evans stepping in as manager of the defunct Cook's Venture Poultry Company in November and still runs what's left of it, he told Axios by phone. Soon after closing, the company received a $70 million line of credit. It's not clear how the money is being used. Why it matters. Questions remain about how the company used its capital, why it suddenly ceased operations, leaving farmers and employees floundering, and what it will do with its tangible assets. Its investors, who provide an estimated $150 million, are without any immediate means of repayment. State of play. Aside from some skeleton operations, Cook's Venture stopped functioning as a poultry company, but still owns millions of dollars in land and buildings in Decatur and in Oklahoma. And there's an estimated multi-million-dollar value in its proprietary chicken breed, the Pioneer. What we're hearing, community conversations have circulated in recent weeks about Cook's Venture being sold, but Evans wouldn't confirm it with Axios, and neither would a potential buyer when reached by phone. Follow the money. Cook's Venture received a line of credit in December using its Jay, Oklahoma property as collateral. A subsidiary of insurance brokerage and consulting firm Arthur J. Gallagher and Company is listed as the primary lender. The intrigued Cherokee Temps staffing service in Muskogee, Oklahoma, filed a $150,631 lien against the same property in November for non-payment of a labor contract. So Cherokee Temps, I believe, is a employment service through the Cherokee Nation. I guess I could click on it and see. Yeah. So what kind of looks like a Job Corps type deal. Through the Cherokee Nation. Anyways, between the lines, a different subsidiary of Gallagher helped Cooks land a $50 million loan in 2022, backed by his intellectual property, the pioneer bird. So those birds must be worth a pretty good chunk of money if they were able to get a loan for $50 million. What he's saying, quote, I've been advised by our counsel. I really cannot comment on anything at all at this stage related to anything, Evans told Axios last week. When was this? This was on March 28th, so a couple weeks ago. Quote, it's a lot of moving parts and things like that, right? Behind the scenes, Cook's Ventures continues to raise pedigree birds to preserve the genetics of its breed. People familiar with the company have told Axios. Evans didn't respond to an emailed questions about how the resulting eggs are disposed of or sold. Bottom line, he also declined to say how the $70 million line of credit is being used, or if the company will honor its debts owed contract farmers and others. So now there's part 4. Yeah, okay. So this is the last part of it here. And this was on April 4th. It's just the other day. It says manager of defunct Cook's Venture left wake of businesses. Blake Evans, the current leader of Cook's Venture, can be found at the edges of several historical economic storms in northwest Arkansas. The closure of the 5-year-old company in Decatur is the latest in a series of booms and busts across his career. State of play. Evans was appointed CEO of Peterson Farms in 2004 at age 29. At the time, the poultry enterprise founded by his late grandfather, Lloyd Peterson, made an estimated $128 million in annual revenue. The big picture says the global financial crisis of 2008 was a turning point. So he was 4 years into the job when the market collapsed. The recession hit banks with overextended real estate portfolios, but also impacted poultry companies plagued by high grain prices and low demands. Evans was at the intersection of both. Catch up quick. Evans and his parents held about a 30% stake in A&B Financial of Bentonville when the bank failed in May 2008. All three were on its board of directors, and the family lost an estimated $50 million. The Evans family still owned Peterson Farms, but sold its meat producing and propane operations to Simmon Foods of Siloam Springs later that year. The Peterson breed was sold in 2010 to Aviagen, one of the world's largest poultry genetic companies. They also owned Decatur State Bank, founded by Evans' grandfather Lloyd Peterson in 1954. Run in part by Evans and his mother, Peterson's daughter, the bank lost money in 2010 and 2011 and was under an enforcement action by the FDIC in 2012. Danville's Chambers Bank acquired controlling interest of the holding company in 2012, and the bank assets were eventually sold to an investment group. In 2013, Crystal Lake Farms launched using much of the old Peterson Farms land and infrastructure in Decatur. Evans was a co-owner and president in 2017 when Crystal Lake was sold to West Liberty Farms of Iowa. An entity managed by Jonelle Hunt, widow of trucking founder J.B. Hunt, was listed as seller in land records. Under new leadership, Evans was named vice president of industrial affairs. The latest, West Liberty Foods sold the company in 2018 to Matthew Wadiak, who created Cook's Venture. Wadiak paid $2 million for Arkansas land and buildings and at least $4 million for Oklahoma land and buildings, according to records. Evan was named executive vice president of Cook's. That same year, Evans declared personal bankruptcy, estimating his assets between $100,000 and $500,000 and liabilities between $10 million and $50 million. So the same year he personally declared bankruptcy, he was appointed to executive vice president of this Cook's Venture. What they're saying, Wadiak declined to talk with Axios about Evans' employment at the company, citing personal reasons. Others with familiarity of Cook's Venture's operations declined to speak on the record out of concern for their future career prospects. Bottom line, Evans declined to talk with Axios on the record for this story after several attempts spanning 3 weeks. Quote, if there was anything else that popped out at a later date, we could talk about it or whatever. I'd certainly let you know that, he said in one phone call. Yeah, this is a crazy story. And so here, and this was August 24th, 2023. Cook's Venture appoints Neiman as CEO. John Neiman has been appointed as CEO of Cook's Venture, a vertically integrated poultry business with proprietary genetics for slower growth, pasture-raised bird. The company is based in Decatur, Arkansas. Neiman is an experienced business leader, entrepreneur, and regenerative agriculture farmer who previously held the position of president of protein ingredients and international at Cargill, one of the world's leading food and agriculture companies. As part of a 20-plus year career at Cargill, Neiman was also president of Cargill's turkey and cooked meats division, and before that, its food distribution business. Throughout his career, Neiman has delivered growth, operational excellence, and value creation across all his business endeavors, including his most recent ventures, Prime Dirt Midwest and Acedo Biologicals, where he'll remain an investor and board director. So after the founder, what was his name? Matthew Wadiak or something like that. Let's see. Wadiak. Yeah. So after he steps down as CEO, they bring in the dude from Cargill, and he presides over the last of it, where I wonder how much he didn't know what he was getting into when he signed on. You would think he would have to know a little bit, and I wonder how much he regrets taking that job, because when you use this avian flu outbreak as a crutch to just liquidate almost 1.5 million birds, and just stick all those guys that you contracted. They're owed money because they're growing these birds for you, but they don't own the birds, so then they can't do anything with them. And this whole situation, and there's no alternative source for it, because you're a vertically integrated company. So once your process and facilities shut down, then you're not killing any birds, and they're just stacking up But you're also providing the feed for them. And there was an article somewhere that that I read on this where they're talking about. I mean, there's like birds with their guts hanging out. Here we go. Well, we got a video. I'll pop that up. I haven't watched this yet, so we'll watch it in real time. But this is from Fox 23 News out of Jay, Oklahoma.
Christmas, it's a bad deal. You wouldn't think people would do that to you right before Christmas. It's a bad deal.
Covering news that matters in Delaware County, former employees of the Cook's Venture poultry processing plant in Jay are still reeling after learning they no longer have a job.
Fox 23's Amy Heibel spoke with the mayor of Jay, who says the majority of the employees at the Jay facility were let go the day before Thanksgiving.
Becky Farley about the steps they're taking to try and help the employees who lost their jobs here at the processing plant.
I was on a leave of absence for a little bit and come back to find out that I didn't have a job.
After coming back from leave, Tommy Kitchen says he learned on Friday he no longer has a job at Cook's Venture poultry processing plant in Jay. He showed us the termination letter he picked up at the plant on Friday, dated November 22nd, which reads in part, "We regret to inform you that despite our best efforts, we have been unable to find a solution to the company's financial difficulties and are left with no choice but to shut down the company and its facilities." He has yet to tell his kids. We caught up with him at the community center where the Oklahoma Employment Security Commission is helping folks like Tommy who have lost their jobs.
Getting unemployment going and probably see if I can find another job going and see if maybe I might get something going so at least I can still get them some Christmas presents,
I hate it that those families are going through that during Thanksgiving, Christmas, holiday season. That loss of jobs is devastating.
Mayor Becky Farley says the plant in Jay employed about 200, and the majority have lost their jobs.
They retained maybe 40, something like that.
We reached out to Cook's Venture on Friday and have not heard back. A letter they sent to the Oklahoma Office of Workforce Development and their counterparts in Arkansas, dated November 17th, states the company is expected to shut down its operations and close all of its facilities between November 20th and November 30th. Cook's Venture has 5 locations in Decatur, Arkansas, and 1 in Gentry. They also have a plant in Tahlequah and the poultry processing facility in Jay, Oklahoma. The letter says it's expected that any such shutdowns and closures would be permanent. I spoke with a shift manager off camera who tells me they are looking for a buyer, and in fact they have a tour coming through here today. In the meantime, those without work like Tommy Kitchen of Grove have this advice for others in the same boat.
Keep your higher power, pray about it, and maybe keep,
There was another article I'd read about it, but I'm having a hard time finding it now. Not finding it. So anyways, that's all the articles I got. Close on my thoughts on this whole deal, but I don't know what happened in between this, this grand scheme they had to revolutionize the chicken industry and save the earth and whatever else they were planning on doing. But they ran out of money. And then they essentially they knew that they couldn't do anything with these birds, and so I don't know what their thought process was, but rather than like just liquidating their birds in a way that they could actually get some return for it. I don't know if that maybe I don't know exactly how they do that, but instead their solution was just like, oh shit, we can't do it. We're going to call the state of Arkansas because that's looks like that's where all the birds were. It looks like Oklahoma was more. I don't know if it was strictly processing facilities or if they had some farms in Oklahoma as well, but it looks like for the most part the birds were in Arkansas, and then the processing happened in Oklahoma, from what I understand. I'm gonna have to do a follow up on this because this is still pretty fresh with um the euthanizing of the birds happened like the end of 2023, the first part of this year. But I bet you this case, with litigation, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some serious criminal charges that get brought up, which from at first glance and from what I've read up to this point. So from several hours of dedicated research to this topic, I think there should probably be a lot of people that end up in jail over this thing because they completely fucked the pooch on this. Their solution is like, oh well, we're worried about the bird flu, so and by the way, we don't have any way to get rid of these birds. Anyways, we can't pay our bills, so we can't process them. So bird flu is a problem, right? We could just kill them all and get the state to do it, and that would save us a bill, I guess. But then their solution is like compost the birds in their chicken house, which is a nice euphemism, which is you just let them sit there and rot until they're essentially just soil, and then you can spread that on your farm fields. But in the meantime, it just stinks and rots, and it's a kind of a health issue. And then those folks, you still owe them money now. And then they couldn't like even sell their birds off or try to make any go of it. Just like, nope, we're coming in. We're gonna spray them with this foam shit. I'd have to look into that and see what that's all about. But I guess birds are kind of, if you liquidate a cow herd, you can shoot them one by one. And I guess like you could have because I was thinking about this, not for any sort of fascination, but just for example, like what is the process of killing 1.3 million birds? And in this case, it's just you spray them down with this foam shit, I guess. And I don't know much about it, but like for cattle, you'd have to. I mean, it seems like that'd be a lot easier to kill individually, and therefore, I don't know of any foam that you can spray on cattle and makes them die, or at least not right away like that. But like for cattle, I was thinking you could run them through like a processing chute. Once catch their head, you have your loader or like a winch right there, so you can drag them out and haul them off. But you shoot them in the head there in the chute, and then open it up, hook them up, and drag them out. And you could probably be pretty damn efficient with that way, and get a lot of cattle killed in a short amount of time. But still, 1.3 million head would take forever. So this way, it's a lot more efficient. But since it's the state doing it, it has to have their inspectors there. And there was one article I was really wanting to read because it sounded like the state was really, somebody knows what they're doing is not exactly kosher when they don't want you recording it. And the dude, one of the dudes that was mentioned in a previous article was wearing a GoPro, and they kept trying to get him to turn the cameras off. They try to say that he couldn't he couldn't record any of it, which he ignored. And then they eventually just left like halfway through the job, it sounded like. And if you know anything about Arkansas, which I don't know a ton, but what I've read over the past several years, particularly with a lot of the lawsuits and investigations against the packing companies, Tyson being the main one, because they're them and I guess Cargill too. I don't know as much about Cargill. They're not in the headlines as much as Tyson. But Tyson started as a poultry company, and then they bought IBP, which is Iowa Beef Products, to get into the beef game, and they're a massive company, and they lobby heavily for their on the federal level for their senators, and they're, I would say, very instrumental in rigging the game of the regulatory game on the meat packing side of things, to rig it in their favor, where they can, use that power and influence to exert pressure on the on the supply chain further down the line. And it's so like they got a lot of politicians in their pockets, and particularly being involved in the agriculture sector, they have a say in who's the agriculture commissioner, who the higher ups, the muckety mucks within the Arkansas Department of Agriculture, as well as at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Arkansas, well, it's a small state. When you get to the Senate, everybody's equally represented because you got two from each state. The House is a little different story, but each party has certain people that they set at the on the as the heads of committees or higher ranking members within different committees, and a lot of the like a lot of the USDA people, like Secretary of Agriculture and stuff, are have very close connections with the packing industry, because they run a lot of that shit. It's meat packing's a massive multi-billion-dollar industry, very important industry, and they help feed the entire country. So it's they're very powerful, and so you had to know, like, these big, like Tyson and Cargill and Pilgrim's Pride, which I think is owned by JBS, or maybe that was the merger that didn't go through. I'm not for sure, but either way, all these big giant poultry packers, they had to have known what was going on over there. And it seemed like the State Department of Agriculture, I mean, they just kind of went along with it. All right, we'll do the euthanasia for you, but that's all that's what we're here for. We're not, and then from what I read, none of the farms that were owned by this Cook's venture, or that had birds there, none of those farms were ever tested positive for the bird flu. So the only reason that they put down 1.3 million chickens was because this company couldn't pay its bills and therefore couldn't continue to operate. And now most of these farmers are out the money and have an enormous pile of dead, rotting, stinking chickens that the company apparently didn't have money to help remove with, outside of a couple different operations. And seemed like only one of them that really actually stood up to the whole process. And no, you're not gonna kill these birds unless you're gonna cart them off after you're done. And funny thing is, they actually followed through with it because he made it stink. So, like, if you stand up to him, like, they kind of have to do something. Will that guy ever get paid? I don't know, but it seems to me, from what I've read here, and of course we've not heard anything really from the Cook's Venture side of things, which probably smart from them. because they're going to be almost for sure embroiled in a major legal battle for several years to come. So I don't know what their side of the story is, which I'd be very intrigued in hearing it. Where everything went wrong, and the decision making that led up to, it's like, well, fuck it, we just kill all the birds and we can get the state to do it. At least we don't have to pay for that end of the deal, and then we can just welch on the rest of the shit like we've already done. So I would hope to see some criminal charges come out of this. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. Particularly, the South kind of has well, I don't. It's hard to even classify the South as having single them out as having a history of corrupt politics, because like the politics has a long storied history of corrupt politics. So anywhere where there's centralized decision making, there's going to be corruption involved. So, but the South has its own story of that, its own history of kind of local party apparatuses running things, good old boys club. So it's the same thing as like the Chicago political machine, Tammany Hall in New York back in the day, the Harry Reid and his Democratic machine down in Las Vegas. It's all the same shit, just different people, and slightly different ways of how they do things. But I mean, it's all at the end game. It's all the same shit. It's backroom dealings and heavy-handed tactics, and to keep the money train rolling. And I wonder what the actual story is behind this downfall. Was it just strictly bad business tactics? Was it dirty pool from the other the big four packers? I think it's four in the poultry industry as well. How much did that play into it? You wouldn't think it'd be a ton, because like they weren't dependent on the big companies, except there at the very end when they were like, hey, can you squeeze in some extra chickens to slaughter for us, because we can't do it ourselves because we got no monies. And they're just like, nah, we're full, bro. And I mean, is it a shitty move? Yeah, kind of, but can't blame them. It's not their fault, not their problem. Not my problem, homie. So I don't necessarily blame them on that end. But I wonder how much shit went into play to, them pushing back against this startup company that, while I don't think it actually threatened their their overall business, maybe they viewed that it did. And then I wonder what the conversation was for those state Department of Agriculture people, like that Wes Ward, the Secretary of Agriculture. Like, what the fuck was that conversation like? Well, this company can't do anything with these birds because they're just out of money, or they refuse to do anything. And now they're like, well, I guess avian influenza. We use that as, plausible deniability. But yeah, none of that. I bet they were just hoping for one case of avian influenza. So they're like, see, we got to do it. We got to do it. And how much did those people at the Department of Agriculture, did they get paid off by the company? And if so, how much were they paid? Like, was that another backhand deal? It was little cui bono, who, you scratch my back, or cui bonos who benefits. What are they? Oh, quid pro quo. That's what I'm thinking of. Was it a quid pro quo? Scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Like, hey, this is a pretty shitty thing you're asking us to do. How much that money you still got left, huh? Was it a shakedown? How much was a shakedown, and who was getting shooken down? Well, the contract growers and the employees at the. Well, I guess the employees, you're just at a job if you're working at the processing plant. Like it's a. Not that their plights not it's not a struggle for them too, but it's a job. Maybe there's not that many jobs in Jay, Oklahoma, but let's face it, you're working at a chicken kill plant. It's not the most desirable job either. And so like they're out, but at least they can go get unemployment. But these contract growers, where they don't own the birds, they own the land. They bought the land. They built the chicken houses. They did all these, set it up to the standards of this company that just really cares about so much about animal welfare and climate change. No idea what was in the chemicals that they used to make the foam that they sprayed on to kill them. What kind of effect does that have on the environment? I don't know if Cook's Venture was really took that into consideration. Disease control, like what kind of disease you gonna get from 102,000 rotten chicken corpses after you spray them down? Did you think about the welfare when you decided to just get rid of almost 1.5 million birds? Really, really shitty situation. And I wonder how many times something like this has happened before with some of the, your traditional big packers where, not on the regenerative side of things and the double speak, talking about animal welfare, but while at the same time just liquidating a million birds. But I wonder how many times like some of those big companies like yeah. So I subscribe on email to meetingplace.com, which is they essentially cover the packing industry, and there's particularly here recently like quite a few packing plants that get shut down. And a lot of times they're poultry facilities, and so we saw this with like when the Tyson plant there at Holcomb, Kansas, a couple summers ago. If you've been listening to the show for a long time, you might remember it, but it's I covered it quite a bit back in the day, and that fire shut down the plant for several months, caused a backlog in fat cattle, caused a huge price drop in fat cattle, and then at the same time, like they had to really shuffle around their capacity. But so like I wonder how many times when they shut down one of these chicken plants that they use that as an excuse to just they got nowhere to go with the birds, so they find some rationale to just liquidate a bunch of them. They did that in the hog industry over COVID. I mean, there was like 100,000 pigs that just got killed, but not. I mean, they got slaughtered, but not butchered. They just just went to waste, got composted or buried or whatever. And I wonder how many times that's happened over the years. Like I said, I don't really follow much on the poultry industry, but this seemed like a pretty significant one. And it seems to me like it was like this chef dude that started it. He had some money because he was riding a hot hand after helping start that Blue Apron deal, which I don't know how that thing's going nowadays. It went public, but then he partnered up with this other dude who just had like a string of failures from his whole career, but like still seemed to land pretty lucrative positions. but from bank failures to kind of ruining his granddad's legacy, and now this deal where just you've got what they say 71 different farms where they're just like one dude still owed 40 grand, another old another, I don't know if she's old, but another lady that's only been paid about 10% of what was owed to her, and it's a shitty deal. Seems like somebody's gonna have to pay or go to jail for that. It will it happen? I don't know. Seems like it ought to, but if anybody out there knows anything about this more than what I've covered, let me know. I'd love to talk to you and discuss it. I'm gonna keep an eye on this story and see where it goes, because like I said, that's kind of a big deal. We'll see where it goes, but I know it's not exactly cowboy related or beef related at all, but it's pretty shocking story, honestly. And I'll reach out to Jake Smith, see if he knows anything about it. That's kind of, like I said, it's kind of his neck of the woods. I wouldn't be surprised if he knew a few of the people that raise these chickens for these guys. So anyhow, that's what I got for you. We'll see if there's anything else that comes up here in the future. In the meantime, patreon.com/Burnin Daylight if you'd like to help support the show. This social media thing's really got me kind of locked down. I'm not getting any more growth, so I think I'm gonna break down and make new accounts and try to not post as many spicy memes on there. Maybe I can get my clips from this show to reach more people. We'll see. Probably not gonna work. Got the black mark from the social medias on me, but anyways, once I do that, I will announce it on here. So, and try to build up an audience that's and maybe that page won't get shadow banned quite as hard, maybe, and it'll be allowed to grow organically. Don't have much hopes for it, but we'll try it. Try something. I think gotta try something else. But in the meantime, working on some good guests for the near future, and a couple different projects I'm working on. So I'll keep you updated as they progress, and I hope you guys enjoyed this show. It went longer than I thought it was going to, but that's how it goes. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you have a good week. Hopefully spring is upon you where you're at. It's trying here, but we still get a little squall every now and then. Turns cold for a couple days, so we're about over it. Can't wait for it to be done. Baseball started, and yeah, things are looking up. So hope all is well in your world, and we'll be back for another episode. And on that note, move your ass. We're burning daylight.
Your eyes up in the morning, beneath the stars so bright. Pull your hat down, make sure your cinch is tight. Horse is kinda snuffy, cold chill up your spine. We'll get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight. Burning daylight. Burning daylight. In the saddle till the job's done right. Just together, and you won't catch 'em all. But when you ride through the gate, make sure you sit up tall. see the horizon, it's looking pretty bright. Well, get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight. Burning daylight. Burning daylight. In the south, till the job's done right.